Welcome to 8.1. It's about three-dimensional figures, and we're gonna start right away with a solid. So a solid is a three-dimensional figure that encloses a space. A polyhedron is a solid whose faces are all polygons. So polyhedron is what we should be focusing on in this one. I would suggest right away you getting some type of flashcards or something to remember these. There's a lot of terms that we're going to deal with. I've got 3 more that I'm going to give to you right away before example 1, and then I have 2 more right before example 2. So quite a few of them, so make sure you're keeping track of those. So looking at the shape, and I want you to sketch this out, there's 3 things that we need to know what are on this actual shape. So let's start with a face. So a face on a shape like this is anything, well, kind of, if you think about it, it makes sense. A face is a flat surface of the polyhedron. So this is a polyhedron, and this would be one face on it. An edge would be just one of these edges. Any of these lines, if you will, would be considered a line, or an edge. It's a line segment where two faces intersect. Okay? And then my last thing is a vertex, and that's where a point, it's a point where 3 or more edges intersect. So this would be a vertex. There's also many more faces, many more edges, and many more vertexes. So I'm going to put the definitions on here. I want you to copy those down, but just so you know, those are the 3 things we're going to talk about next. So one more time as a review, a face, okay, is a flat surface of a polygon, and an edge is a line segment where 2 faces intersect, and a vertex is a point where 3 or more edges intersect. Example 1, finding the numbers of faces, edges, and vertices. The directions will read, find the number of faces, edges, and vertices of the solid. And here's the solid. The first thing I like to do is find all my different edges. Okay, so just basically, where do all those lines intersect? Where am I finding, the points, if you will? So everywhere you have lines intersect, 3 of them, those are going to be your vertices. So labeling them all would look like that. Then you can count them up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just kind of looking around the shape, you realize there's not any other ones there. So you can write that down. 8 different points. So that means there's 8 vertices. So that's our first step. Then I like to see how many line segments do I have. So I'm going to take and count each line that I can find and put it over with red. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4. So I did all my across lines. And then I've got 5, 6, 7, 8 lines that go vertical. And then I also have the ones that go across the top here, like this. So I have 9, 10, 11, 12. It is really good to use different colors in this because then you can kind of see which ones you've put down. So we have 12 edges. And then you write that down. The last thing that we need to find are how many faces do we have. I always like to do this one last because this is the one that I kind of color in. But as you do them, you start with coloring in. Alright, I got 1 face here. And then I'm going to do all my sides like that. There's 2. There's 3. And then I've got my front like that. There's 4. Okay, and this is where it gets tricky. So I'm going to erase those. I've got 4. I'm just going to make a note that I've got 4, but I got to add more to it. So I'm just going to erase what I did just so you can kind of see. You don't have to erase. You can continue with what you're doing. But it's hard to tell with mine. And then I also have to look. I've got my large one in the back. So that would be, oops, all this area. There's 5. Okay, so I'm going to add that one here. And I'm just going to erase mine so you can see. Then I have this one up front. Okay, so there's another one I can add to it. And then I just have to kind of look at it again and say, all right, making sure I got every single one of them. You can make a mark. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looking around, it looks like I've got everything that I can possibly find as far as faces go. This is probably the more difficult one. That's why I like to kind of add them up. And I should have a total of 6 faces. There's 1 face on the bottom, there's 1 face on the top, and there's 4 faces on the side. So my answer would be 8 vertices, 12 edges, and 6 faces. Try one on your own. Alright, go ahead and try it. So my shape isn't the best, but you can try to imagine it. So you're going to find the number of faces, edges, and vertices of the solid. So you're going to probably want to write out faces, edges, and vertices. And then tell me what numbers each of them are. Okay, I'm going to put the answers on here, so make sure you pause it if you're not done yet. So there's 5 faces, 9 edges, and 6 vertices. If you didn't get those as your answer, I want you to take some time and try and figure out how could I come up with that? How did Mrs. Taylor give that as an answer? And if you're struggling with it, put it as a note in your notes so that you can check in with me. Okay, the key ideas. I know I got a lot here, so start writing it down as I go. We're going to start over here with prisms, okay? So a prism is a polyhedron that has 2 parallel identical bases that the lateral faces are parallelograms. So basically, let me just kind of show you what I'm talking about here and point out a couple things. So we have 3 things going on here. First of all, we have a base right here, which would be this triangle. And then we have a base right here, which would be this triangle. And then we have our lateral face, which the lateral faces are parallelograms. Okay. And those would be these right here. So kind of, if you will, I'll just color that in. That is my lateral face. Now I'm going to erase that right now because I have one more thing I need to write underneath it for you. But I'll just put a arrow pointing to your lateral face. Think about it, because if you imagine the other side of it, a lateral face, a lateral face, they're parallelograms, so you have 2 of them that are exactly the same, right? And they're squares, okay? We have that one on that side and that one on the other side. It's a face. Our base happens to be the triangles at the end, okay? Now with my pyramid, a pyramid is a polyhedron that has 1 base. The lateral faces are triangles. Let me point these out. So my base would be this bottom square here, okay? And then my lateral faces would be my triangles, okay? So the lateral face are all of these triangles. These are faces, but they're all, there's one back there too. So there'd be 4 lateral faces in this situation with 1 base. So the shape of the base tells the name of the prism or the pyramid. So now we can put a name on these. And the first shape is a triangular prism because the base tells me what the name of the prism or the pyramid is. This is our base over here. It's rectangular. Over here is triangular. Okay, so you have to be able to identify all those different things that are happening so you can see what shapes things are. When you're talking about 3-dimensional shapes like that and solids, you're talking about naming them, and this is how they're named. Example 2, drawing solids. Okay, the directions say to draw a rectangular prism, so there's steps to take. I'm going to show you step 1, step 2, and step 3. Okay, so step 1, we're going to draw identical rectangular bases because the name rectangular prism tells me I have to have two identical rectangular bases. So there's one rectangle, there's another rectangle. Everybody's might look a little different. Now that I have that, my step 2 would be to connect the corresponding vertices. So I'm going to go my top left corner, go down to my top left corner. Start up here in my top right corner, go down to my top right corner, my bottom right corner to my bottom right corner, bottom left corner to bottom left corner. So those are all being connected right at their vertices. Remember, our vertices are just those points where they all connect. Okay? You don't have to write that in there, I'm just kind of showing you. And then step 3 is the easiest part. You're changing any hidden lines to dashed lines. So in other words, if I were to have this, I'm going to do this quick and try to make it the same, but if it was like this, and then I had all my lines that corresponded to each other, what you would do is you would take your eraser and you would make sure that any lines that you wouldn't be able to actually see, you take them away. Kind of what you learned on the video for M-Step, so you wouldn't be able to see those lines in there. Those would kind of be in the background. And that's how you draw a rectangular prism. Now we're going to draw a triangular pyramid. Same thing, I'm going to give you 3 steps. We're going to do the same thing and move on. So on this one, you're going to start off with drawing a triangular base and a point. So here's my triangular base, okay, and then I'm just going to put a point, maybe a little darker, whoops. There should be a point right above it, okay? And then from there, step 2 will look like this. So now you're just going to connect the vertices of the triangle to the point, okay? So every point will be connected to a vertice. Then, of course, you're going to change any hidden lines to dashed lines, and it would look like this on the end. And this is what our final product would look like. And this is our last example. It's drawing views of a solid. Okay, we're going to draw the front, the side, and the top views of this eraser. So thinking about looking at this from a front view, it looks like a parallelogram. So the front view that I'm talking about is right here. This is our front. So we would just draw a parallelogram to represent that. And it would look something like that, and you would just label it front. So now we have to do a side and a top view. So the side view would be this portion right here, which would look like a little rectangle if you were looking at it straight on. Whoops. So it would just be, I'm going to make that a little clearer. It would just look like this. So this would be our side view. And then our top view, if you were looking down at the eraser, it would just be a larger rectangle. Now, some kids get confused because they want to put in like something like this, and we're not doing that. We're just looking at it from a top section. So this wouldn't have anything to do with the top view of that eraser. It would just literally look like this, and that would be our top view. Okay? So we'll kind of do some work with this and practice with it, but kind of, you got to really imagine it, and I have some things to show you in class with this. Alright, that's it for this video.